That's currently how my little accident's going. The other day I fell asleep. I've made this video about 3 or 4 times before, and what makes it difficult is just being who I am, you know. And when you reveal a lot about yourself, then you get a little disgusted at revealing a lot about yourself. But it makes it easier, I think, to some degree. It's kind of like I'm back here again, you know, that kind of feeling every time you have an addiction and you're not like really dealing with it. I think the thing is that I'm at the point where I don't really think that it's that addictions are bad. I think what's bad is saying that that you're over it and you're never going to do it again, you know, and you know that's not going to be the case. That it's always going to be a part of you. That and I think the thing is to try to think about the psychology, about the science, about the religion, and what it all has to do with anything, and to talk about it from all standpoints, which is what I do, rather than just talking about dwelling on one and pretending the other twos don't exist or the other one doesn't exist. And there's a part of my brain that says, you know, if you were married, you probably wouldn't be in porn or any of that stuff. But the other thing is that I don't know what marriage would be like. I've never been married. I have a kind of a high standard for marriage that if I ever was to get married, I would never divorce. I would never get divorced. And but the other thing is that I think for me, marriage is not all that important because all that matters is that I am around people. I don't have to have a special love. I think it only matters if you're having children. Outside of that, it really doesn't matter at all. And it's more important to be around people, okay, and to have friends or to have people that care for you or people you care for. And if you try to make it into something, if you try to make yourself a couple with, I mean, celebrities have the hardest time being by themselves. You know, they don't go to benefits or whatever by themselves. They go in pairs with someone. And is it a friend they go with? But they never go by. How often do they go by themselves to a benefit? And or to some function, you know. It'd be great if celebrities, when they go down the red carpet, they bring all their friends together and they all go down as one unit, not just one person or two people, but all the friends. And if somebody said, well, you can't do that because they're not celebrities, you say, okay, I'm not coming to your benefit, fuck you. And that's what you do. Yeah, this is Rugburn, man. So I think every time I think my best videos are the ones where I am creative like that. You know, why you never see this, why you never see that. And I hope that's the reason why people watch my stream, is whenever I say something like that, you know, things you don't see in the world, you know. and why you don't, and asking questions why. And I think God likes people who ask questions, rather than people who will say none of this is none of this is not true, that's not true, and or it is easy to say that's pretty stupid over there, but to say why not this, why not that, and then everybody chimes in with their replies, and then people are talking. At least it's getting people mingling about some subject. Some people might get uppity up about it, but if nobody asks a question, why this, or I like such and such, and they don't stick to it, then people won't recognize it as being something to talk about, and they won't. I mean, they'll avoid it because they'll think they're the only one there. And I think the more that we identify with, the more that we bring up our likes and our not dislikes, but our likes and our and not concerns, but when we think of, if you can think of something that's unique that's not being said, and bring that up and say, and then give enough of a descriptive uh, context to it, so that people don't like instantly jump at it, and if they jump at it and you say, well, you didn't read my context, you didn't read the description of what it is that I'm talking about. I'm not just simply talking about this thing. I'm talking about this thing within this context. And then, it'll make it harder for them to argue it, because it'll force them to understand what you're getting at, because the language is just very hard. It's not oral communication and written communication. All kinds of communication is flawed without context, without enough context, and if people don't understand the context, they'll jump at anything. You could say anything to somebody, and they would jump at it because they're expecting, they didn't get the context, and so they jump at it, not completely understanding what you're saying, and until you've interacted enough, then you start to understand that you're not that different. You see, and that's the process by which you develop an ability to identify with others, and and by doing that, by being able to discuss things like that, and it's called discussing your differences, also discussing your likes, also just talking, interacting, and when you interact with other people, you're eliminating racism, you're eliminating anything that might get in the way between you two seeing each other as being human, because the inability to identify with another person is saying that other person is not like you, is not a human. You consider yourself human, right? And so they, if you don't identify with them, they are less than human. They're like an animal. Okay, that's the worst case scenario of failing to identify with someone, is you don't see them as human, you see them as an animal. Okay, and if you go back and you look into the old books and stuff, in the old history and stuff, about, say, what Japanese people thought of Portuguese people, and I had heard they thought somebody described in Japanese, described a Portuguese person as being as a alien creature with a conch shell for a nose, because they had bigger nose, and it was just the thing that stuck out to them. But because their brain had the incapacity to recognize the nose on the Portuguese person as being like the nose on a Japanese person, since it was so different, the facial features are so different, the Japanese person wasn't able to identify the person as being human, but as like being an alien creature, like being a green man with pointed ears. Now, someday we're going to find in the forest that there is a green man with pointed ears, and then we're going to find out that he's a different race of us. Okay, but that's the thing is that people hadn't completely gone throughout the earth and explored. And every time you come in, and they got videos of this on YouTube where they'll come in contact with some tribe or some people that were separated from everybody else, and all it takes is 100 years to get completely separated from civilization and have your own little tribe. And when you come back in contact with humans, it's like you're seeing a ghost. You can't recognize the person, and I mean you can't they look so different from you. You've never seen them before in your life. You've never seen a person with that colored skin, with those facial features, or any of that stuff, and you would say it's racist. It's not. It's the inability to identify the other as being like yourself. It's human. It's the inability, and that's just the way the brain. That's just the way it is. Whenever you don't and it's at varying degrees of identification. It's at the very basic is being able to identify the form of somebody as being like you, and then it's to identify the behavior of someone as being like you. And over time, as you become more as you interact with people more, which is what will get rid of the stereotypes and the racism and all that stuff, interacting a lot is how you fix it. And when people say you're a racist, then you're presenting one reason to not be involved with them, and you're going to it's best not to call someone a racist. It's best to say, hey, how's it going? I didn't see, rather than saying they're racist, take into account that it's probably the case that if racism is taught, the way to undo racism is to interact with people. And if they're racist against you, don't let that stop you from getting near them. They're not going to attack you. They're just going to be, they might be a little bit disgusted, and then eventually they might start finding things they like about you. And the idea is to find the things that it's just like dating or something. You find the things that you share, you have in common. And so I guess that's probably the reason why in some cultures, whenever two cultures come together, one will give a gift to one culture and the other one is going to scramble around to get a gift to give to the other, and that's what starts them integrating, And so you find things that you like, and in our culture, it's sports or it's music, and it's on those likes that we're able to come together and we're able to overcome racism. But what's been happening in the news, and you probably read about this with Facebook, is that they found out that their money-making model was that if they put up advertisements or they put up any kind of stuff in people's Facebook profiles, so as you're going through your wall, you get a little poster or something, an icon, and it might be like a really right-wing racist thing, and or it might be something that would cause you to get enraged. And what they found out is that it made more sense for them to make Facebook users enraged, because that would sell more advertisements. That would get them involved if they could get enraged about something. But Facebook was not really concerned about what they were getting enraged about. and people, and this is what caused a lot of the really crazy acts as a result of Trump not getting because Trump um, was not elected, because Trump was not elected. The people, there were all these people that were organizing a fight against Washington, and they put up a campaign on Facebook, and they targeted people. They I And what was happening was that Facebook, after the election, had turned off a part of their system that was to prevent um, these people from getting really toxic advertisements from getting put on people's on their pages, because Facebook was trying to cut down on that because they didn't want the election to be affected. But when they picked Trump, then afterward they turned off their system that they had in place to prevent toxic discussion about politics, and that's what permitted the march on Washington to get into the White House, the attack. That's what made that so much more effective, because they turned that system off, and then all that stuff came up and hit people's Facebook pages, and people went crazy. And the reason why is because their default business practice was to use advertisements that would enrage people, because it was what sold. Was if you could anger people, it sold better than if you made people happy. Okay, because people wouldn't interact, people wouldn't click through the poster icon. They would say, "Oh, isn't that nice?" and then they wouldn't interact with it. But when they did interact with it, it was usually because it made them angry. And so their whole business practice has been to try to create, to make advertisements, or to show content, or when the advertisers came through, or whoever, whatever kind of thing, to push through the content that was going to make people angry. And a whistleblower came out and told everybody about this, and said that Facebook is not changing their business model to be nice to people, or to be good. Their business model relied on making people angry, and which is counter to kind of the way that people get on Facebook, because when you get on Facebook, you have to specify your likes. What you like this, like that, and the reason why you're liking stuff is so that you can get people, you can find people that are like you, and you can become friends, right? And then but then there's uh, then there's this thing that's going on with Facebook's money model, that is focusing in on what gets people interacting with advertisements. And they found that anger works really well. So they would just focus on putting stuff that makes you angry. And so you'd be on Facebook with your friends, and then you'd get all angry about something, and who knows what they were thinking. You're going to get angry and get together and go and form some, but that's what happened. And it happened all across the world. And so Facebook was getting messages from all these countries saying, you're basically ruining our country by making our people enraged about these issues that are completely pointless. And so it wasn't only happening in America, it was happening everywhere else in the world. But when Americans had their election, they put a system in place to prevent that kind of stuff from showing up. And then they turned it off when the elections were over. And that's the reason why the march on the White House, or when people were were breaking into the White House, the reason why that was happening so effectively was that the system that was in place to prevent that kind of rhetoric from getting on people's Facebooks was being permitted to come through, because they were going back to their preference for making money, which was really toxic advertisements and banners and stuff. I mean, not advertisements, but banners, toxic banners, pictures getting shown up from toxic groups. I don't think they should permit any kind of toxicity on Facebook whatsoever. I think what they should do is they should separate themselves up into two parts. Have Facebook for friends, and then Facebook for idiots. Or not Facebook. Facebook for politics. Facebook politics or something like that, and so that that when you're with your friends, you're not going to get politics or They might even have a Facebook religion, but I think the problem with people with religion is not religion, but with people, and that is the inability to understand other people, understand where they're coming from, and I hate it whenever I start talking about something religious and then somebody says, "Oh, I don't believe in any of that stuff." Well, the thing is that it's a part of me. And there are some people that they grow up in it, and then but then later on they choose it or they don't choose it. Okay, and they either choose it or don't choose it based upon the grounds of it doesn't feel good, or upon what it does to their friends, or upon it's that it's complex and hard to understand. And that would be a good reason to not talk about religion or politics, is because it's complex and hard to understand, and probably not important to even discuss the religion or the politics for those reasons. I think more for religion than for politics. I think the important thing to understand, however, is that the Christian religion is, if you really get into what Jesus was talking about and stuff, he was really trying to get people to behave to behave well enough to interact and love each other. Okay, but it wasn't the case that everybody was going to be able to do it, and that the best you can do is the best you can do, and that you shouldn't try it. If you can't do something, then just it's not like you're less of a person. It's just that it's something you can't do. I'll probably never get married. I'll never be able to get married, but I try to do my best, and I think the best that you can do is try to avoid hurting people, and try to not judge people. It's very difficult to not judge people, because you do it to some degree because you're afraid for your safety. But that's usually, but what you do is you let people come near you, you interact with people, you don't discuss your differences. And the more you can increase the amount of interaction between yourselves, then the more you become friends and all that, the more all these other problems we have fade away. And and whenever I fall into Christianity, it's usually on not about what you do, because that's the reason why I bring about porn and all that stuff, is to say that I'm not any better in that. So I'll never talk about that stuff to you. What I usually talk about is when it comes to that to Jesus stuff, is that love is a choice. You choose to love people. And so it's not an emotion, it's a choice. You choose to love people. And I mean, why not choose to love people? Okay? So nobody is worthy of hate, okay? So I shouldn't be out there hating people, you know. Hate the sin, don't hate the person, you know. That's the idea. And the sin is not, it comes in all sorts of forms, but really at the center of what sin is selfishness. That's basically all sin is selfishness. It's what's good for me is good for me, and or not that. It's what I want matters more than anything else. So if you go to the store and there's like one bottle left of something you think is really good, do you take it off the shelf or do you leave it for the next guy? And I have a tendency to leave it for the next guy because I can always take something else. And it might be something fun just to put a camera in front of one of those refrigerators and see how long that bottle sits there and see how many times people pick it up but then put it back because they're thinking about the next person. They're not thinking about themselves. And so someone who's extremely selfish is someone who always takes. They're always greedy. They always collect lots of money. They're if they're married, it's about what they want. It's not about what their spouse wants. When they're with their children, they're forcing their children to go to things that their children don't want to go to, and their children want to take them somewhere and they don't want to go there. I mean, it takes all. I mean, you can find it everywhere, and everybody's doing it, and it's like it's so common to be selfish, and it's not inhuman to be selfish. It's just that if you fail to recognize that you're selfish, then maybe you've got a problem with selfishness. Also, another thing about sin is that we're designed to sin, and the sin that they talk about in the Bible, mainly what they're talking about is accidental stuff. You know, stuff that you might blame yourself for that was an accident, that wasn't your fault. And so if you accidentally shot somebody, you might see yourself as you know, you might blame yourself for that. It's forgivable, you know, in the Christian religion. But if you didn't have that religion, you probably wouldn't see it as forgivable. Okay, and that's where the religion is best, is in helping you deal with your perception of yourself. Because if you killed somebody accidentally and you knew it was an accident, uh, and someone else thought you killed them on purpose, if that someone else doesn't have religion in their life, they don't have Christ in their life, they're going to blame you for accidentally killing their loved one. Whereas Christ would say to them, you got to do the Jesus thing, you got to forgive them, you know. So they would forgive you for having killed. Whereas if they didn't have any religion, if they didn't have any Christ or anything there to forgive you, they would come after you and they would shoot you, you know. And so that's the thing. That's the reason why you don't want to jump on people's religions, is because you're giving them one less reason to love you. See?